Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another episode of Retailistic. I am very excited to do a deep dive here on CGI, or computer-generated imagery. And as everything is all AI now, every minute of the day, right? We're talking about AI technology for producing product images on e-commerce. And this is something we focused a lot on when I was at Li & Fung, meeting Alex, who's joining us today, who's the founder and CEO of Infinite. Really kind of took what we had done at a very fundamental level and brought it into, let's just say the 21st century in a really interesting way. Alex, thanks so much for joining us today. Maybe tell us a little bit about the founding of Infinite and what was your inspiration?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. Hi, everyone. Infinite basically was founded with the goal of providing a better shopper experience and through content. And the idea was basically to say, okay, today the content that we see on e-commerce website is limited, static, not available, and often not complete. So what kind of solution can we provide brands and supply and retailers to provide a complete immersive content on all their channels? And this is why we created Infinite, SaaS merchandising platform based on 3D and AI to provide unlimited content at scale for the shopper.
So as we've seen from some of the data from the Coresight Research survey, only 9% of US consumers are very satisfied with the quality of product images across retailer websites. Secondly, kind of 4 out of 5, or we'll call it 81% of surveyed brands and retailers reported that they typically display at least 5 product visuals for a single product on their websites. Going back to my time in Asia, we were using a minimum of 18 images, which is why, our return rates were in the single digits. And then as we start to think about kind of this connection kind of back to the consumer and having kind of the same product visual throughout, kind of whether it's, mobile, desktop, omni-channel, even sometimes in stores, right? If they don't have the product, they have an image of it, but having that kind of consistency, these are 3 kind of real pain points, or could be real pain points for retailers and brands. Do you find that they are focused on these? If not, why not? And what do they not understand?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that retailers are now more and more focused on like consistency, completeness, and accuracy of content at scale on all their channels. I think this has been a kind of a new focus, we can say, in 2023. Before that, they were not so focused on that for a lot of reasons. They were privileging like free visuals, inconsistent, incomplete from suppliers. There was kind of a misunderstanding of how technology could provide this content at scale to fulfill the needs of reducing rate of return by accurate content, by having high definition images that can satisfy the shopper's expectations, and also that the consistency around the channels. And I think that what the retailers were missing in the US and are more understanding, but they're still kind of missing in Europe, is that technology, meaning 3D, CGI, and AI, are not cost heavy. They can actually save costs, and that the quality that they get can be at the level of classic photographic pictures. I think this is the shift, understanding that technology with 3D and AI can solve this problem, has been the big shift that we're seeing in the US and we're going to see in Europe.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I think this, kind of maybe lack of understanding about how important, kind of product imagery is. And, once again, going back to some time I spent with Saks and really understanding, the expense involved with having kind of different studios and whatnot. And they're each image, there's this additional cost. But at the same time, they really understood for their customers, and I think for everybody, high quality product photography really does impact sales, but also minimizes returns. Is there, when retailers and brands are thinking about this, is it a cost question? Is it a lack of awareness? Are the right people making the decisions? Where does the disconnect sit?
I think that it's a bundle of things. First of all, I think that there is one first issue, which is visual content has been the territory of creatives, and
Hmm.
I mean, these people, amazing, talents, but their job was to create the perfect hero image for media campaigns. And so a lot of the retailers were stuck in that, idea where, visual were done by creative for a very small amount to create media hero campaigns, and miss the elephant in the room, which is, okay, this is great, but then, what about the product detail page, where you need, to your point, more than 10 images, product and context, 360. So this is the first disconnection, I think the other one is, yes, the cost perspective, where there was this misconception that they needed to invest more money to create better content instead of like saving existing cost, because they thought about creative and how a photo shoot cost, and they needed to scale that. And I think these are the two main, pain points, in blockers that prevented the technology of CGI and AI to scale faster, to provide, consistent, immersive, complete content at scale throughout the whole shopper journey.
That's really interesting. And actually, I think our survey also brought out, I found this number to be just staggering. But as I talked to the folks on the creative side, and actually somebody on our team who, kind of moonlights in terms of some of these photo shoots, that 31% of brands and retailers that use traditional photography so that they experience difficulties in coordinating and executing large physical photo shoots. And so I asked him when we got this data, and he was like, "Oh, people are late. People go to the wrong address, right? We're still like kind of getting back, And it was unbelievable." And I'm like, "Wow, right? It's always interesting when like the data, when I learn something from, or we learn something from the data." And so you start to think about that on a kind of much larger scale for a much larger retailer, and you think about that as a pretty significant pain point. And so as we think about that, slowing things down and adding cost, in your opinion, like, why is it so important today for brands and retailers to improve their speed to market? And also, as they think about these kind of images, and reducing cost, not only producing great images, but at a cost that everybody in the organization is comfortable with, because that seems to me that if they're not worried about that in the speed to market angle, that everybody will be kind of swimming in the same direction, hopefully at the same time.
Yeah. So I think it's, again, speed to market is very, very important for retailers and brands for two main reasons. The first reason is competition. I was yesterday with one of a very big retailer in the US, and they were saying that they're constantly competing with the competitors to put the products first on the market. And in order to do that, they need the content. You can't purchase a product that you're not seeing, so they need the content at the right time, the fastest, in order to gain market shares. The first on the market will make more sales. That's just pure mechanics. And the second thing is, on the cost side, the more you have, assets sitting in your inventory, the more your P&L gets hit. So it is extraordinarily important from both a sales perspective and cost perspective to speed up the time to market. So this for me is why this is so important.
And then, if we think about, right, with headless and composable, whatever we want to call it these days, it's a different term each week. But how does that come into play in changing some of the landscape, and also changing this idea around speed to market? Or does it?
Yeah, 100%. Again, content is being under a very strong revolution. So coming from creatives who were shooting perfect content at a very small scale, through like technology now using 3D, CGI, and AI to create more content at scale, through complete automated, headless content. And this is this is the way we're seeing today, where we have retailers who basically have, millions of SKUs now that they're powering marketplace. Every retailer we work with, they have what they call 1P, which is their own website with their own assortment, but also they power to leverage their traffic. 3P, which is the third party marketplace, meaning that they have assortments of millions of SKUs in order to satisfy the consumer's expectations, who who want just a better, more immersive, complete, customized experience at scale, not only for a portion of the SKUs, but for the whole assortment, 1P and 3P, they need to shift to headless, automated, AI-driven content at scale. And this is completely changing the game plan, the land of content creation today.
How is the evolution in AI impacting not only your business, but how you engage with retailers and brands?
Yeah, AI is an amazing revolution. I mean, it's transforming completely the landscape of the world, not only us, but for us particularly. I mean, it's gonna become it's becoming a commodity, and what it gives us, it gives us superpower. So it's superpower to you know onboard more products faster, to transform more products from 2D into 3D, which is the underlying assets of the whole technology, and in order to automate the visual content outputs that fuels the PDP or the shopper journey from the retailers through AI. It enables better customization. It enables better understanding of the shopper behavior to adapt the content. So it's transformative at every single step of the industry.
And I think that the expectations are, this goes back, this is actually where I've thought that, these are the things I think about late at night, which is, we all had a certain expectation for how we engage with, kind of either digital products or those products once we're in a physical setting in terms of, whether it's on a kind of, we've seen different retailers have physical catalogs in stores so we can see product. We've seen, kind of the, very, very kind of large, kind of screens where we can engage with product. And I think that there's a leveled up expectation from consumers because the creative assets right now are just such at a different level than they were even 6 months ago. And so with everyone's expectations kind of through the roof, don't the retailers need to step up now so that, they don't lose out to some of these, call them ankle biting brands who are, very much aware of this?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think this is a very, very fair assessment. After the hype of the e-commerce during the pandemic, now the brands and retailers, they have to face a very new reality where the e-commerce. The shopping on e-commerce is going down. A shopper have less money to spend, so buy less products. So that means that competition is even more fierce. And in order to gain, in that, competition for the shopper, they're fighting for the shopper bandwidth online, which means they need to provide better content. The shopper shops, because of the content that you provide to them. I had an interesting retailer, again, I say that all the time, but saying that, as an e-commerce pure player, they're not fighting with other e-commerce pure players. They're fighting with Netflix for the shopper's bandwidth. In order to do so, they need to create a shopper experience through visual content, product visual experiences that is differentiated, immersive, dynamic, and inspirational. So yes, to your point, it's harder to get the shopper, it's harder to get a sale. Therefore, if you want to make a difference today and gain market share, you need to create better content. And if you want to do that, you need to adopt new technology right now. Otherwise, you will lose market shares to new direct to consumers, digital native brands that are using these trends and these technology and are just basically winning the shopper.
So based on that, I would assume that, a can of vegetables pretty much looks like a can of vegetables. And, yes, having actually done photos of cans of vegetables in my life, I do know that they can be, better and worse. But I don't think that it necessarily, certainly the images of the cooked food is very different. But if we start to think about sectors or industries where this is having the biggest impact right now, where did you start from an industry sector perspective? What's been your experience and what do you think is next?
Yeah, it's a great question. Again, it's a revolution, and in revolutions you have early adopters, and for us, the early adopting segment was furniture, because furniture you need more immersive. It's an important purchase. The average cart value is high. The engagement it gives, it transforms your home, so it's important. So you need better content to be reassured, to trust that you're making the right choice. You need more immersive content to see a product in a context, and you need some like next generation experiences like AR. So this was an early adopter. For others, it wasn't. For us, it's fashion also, because for the same thing, see how it looks. So all of these, segments were fit for these new technology. Now it's trending from the early adopters to more the mass market, and so other segment, cosmetics is getting very big, luxury even before cosmetics, because it's an important purchase. But I believe, and the laggers were definitely like the what we call the necessity goods, the goods of every day, the CPG, the food, FMCG products. But it's getting there, and what
Hmm.
I would say is, when you listen to retailers say, we've been fighting for shelf space for Tide for 100 years. So I do not see why it would be different for a digital shelf space, which is basically the product visual experience. So every product, it's maybe more important for certain, but every product is eligible and will see an impact on its sales, but a better, merchandising experience online.
Yeah, no, that's actually an excellent point. And it is interesting because you think about it, right? Furniture is big ticket, luxury is bigger ticket. That it's really kind of started with the bigger ticket items, which makes sense. Although the fact that I saw the number, I, like scratched it down in terms of right the cost of a photo shoot. And so if you think about it, right, ultimately we're seeing this huge kind of money savings that's occurring. And so it's, maybe it's just those who are, yeah, I think so. In fact, traditional photography can cost $70,000. And that is kind of crazy in terms of when you think about, right, these bigger ticket companies almost, not only are they doing a better job of getting their product in a kind of, not only in a ecosystem, but also in a way that the consumer better understands what the product is, kind of color, fit, size, and all of that. But they're also saving money. I mean, I remember somebody telling me early on, right, furniture is the biggest mistake that you can make. I think not only in size but in dollars. And so I think that very much kind of sums that up. You know, as you kind of look at, we talked about a little bit before we started the pod today, how different kind of U.S. retailers are from Europe and others. What are you seeing in terms of product imagery, kind of practices, and also just CGI adoption, which is kind of most relevant?
Um, yeah, I think the U.S. from our experience is more advanced in their technology journey when it comes to image creation or content creation. What it means is that they're more adopting at a vast majority CGI and 3D and AI to generate their content. Europe is not there yet. It's starting. It's still lagging, but it's coming afterwards. Um, that I would say. But both have their own trends. I mean, Europe is already understanding pretty well that the how to put a product in context has lived, but they do not yet have the bridge between what they need to do to create the content, meaning more immersive content, with the technology choices that they need to do and put in their budget relative to 3D and CGI.
And so I mean, I think that Infinite has definitely stimulated thought in this area in a way that like I said, I hadn't seen from my Liam Fung days. And this idea that you can also not only use this kind of image for design and then right kind of on your e-commerce site and kind of wherever else you're utilizing kind of digital images. So we've gotten to, in my opinion, very far in a very short period of time. What's ahead for kind of the CGI industry, the AI overlays, and then specifically what's ahead for Infinite?
So in the industry, and so more, maybe more so than just 3D CGI and AI, just in the content, commerce content, visual content industry, I think that we're going to see two different evolutions that are related. One is, we talked about, is how the global industry is moving from creative driven content creation to data driven content creation. And this is a massive shift from, like, someone in the studio having a magical idea that should perform, to, hey, what about we test and customize content to cohort segments, geographies, demographics, whatever. So that, I think, is a big shift, which will enable, of course, the technology and 3D CGI and AI, being the technology to support that. And the second trend, I think, which is very important for me, and that I think will come within the next 5 years, is to move from what I call static content to dynamic content. Static content being the world in which we lived, and we're still living a little bit today, where you have a set of of content experiences per product that are the same throughout the lifetime of a product, which is going to be replaced by dynamic content, meaning that the content is not finished, it's not static, it's dynamic. It can be customized, updated unlimitedly, to be sure that the brand and the retailer shows the right content at the right shopper at the right time. I think these are the two biggest trends that are being fueled by technology, among which, again, 3D and AI, to enable this. And for Infinite, this is what's the future looks like, is how can we, with our 3D AI technology platform, fuel this transformation of the industry, which definitely will benefit the shopper by a more immersive, customized, complete, consistent experience.
I love that complete, consistent experience. One thing that you said earlier that I want to pick up on is that you'd said, right, people can't sell things before they have an image. But now, right, we can generate images in new ways, and we can generate it from, right, the idea of a physical good. We can, kind of take a physical good that we've produced in the past, and we can kind of put an AI overlay on that. So I ultimately believe that we will get to the place where we can almost kind of put images before consumers to test and learn, and then actually put into production. If you think about it from a sustainability, I could talk for hours about this. And then from a sustainability perspective, right, we're not producing things that people don't want. And ultimately you kind of vote with your clicks, etc. How do you think, I mean, this is like where I get really excited about where CGI is and where I think it's going, and the conversations we've had with a lot of large retailers, especially actually in furniture, because of the long lead times. So we've spent a lot of time in the past 12 months in the furniture market, just as it were. How, Alex, does that get you excited? And how do you think about that? Or is that just like we're like a decade away from that?
It definitely gets me excited. I think this is definitely the future. This is definitely where it should be going, because from like, yes, a sustainability perspective, from a shopper experience, from an efficiency perspective, I think it's amazing. It's the, like, for me, it's almost like the end goal of customization. It's the perfect customization from, like, the whole shopper journey to the product. I definitely think that the technology can and will support that. Is it 5 years away, or is it 10 years away? It's hard to say. I think there are a lot of logistical hurdles. There is the way to conceive, accept a product, and then there is the reality of the producing the product. But I definitely think that we're getting there. And to your point, back to the time to market question you had earlier, this is the ideal. It means it's basically a pre-sale, no risk, low return. So it's beneficial for the shopper, for the retailer, for the supplier.
All right, two more kind of futuristic questions. You know, Metaverse is a word that we don't hear as much anymore. I think it's all become kind of like Web3 is the kind of overlying technology solution that we're talking about. So as you think about, I mean, I always thought that the ability to go into a physical, well, either what we had thought, or what we've seen is, right, you can go into a physical environment and digitally interact, right? That was like the whole idea of like HoloLens and all of that, right? You can digitally interact with product, or right, you can be in your home and you can physically, theoretically see what these products might look like before you buy them. And I'm thinking big ticket, right? I mean, it could even be athletic equipment, right? I mean, I know a lot of people who bought athletic equipment. They're like, oh my gosh, I thought it was going to fit. It doesn't fit. So if you think about these large ticket, big physical kind of, goods, how does metaverse web3, does that come into play for Infinite now, later, ever?
Yeah, I mean, again, great question. So first of all, from my end, Web three and metaverse is not dead at all. It's just that it is also a revolution that is coming. And again, I think that the consumer has a journey that is more and more fluid and flexible from like in store, online, and it is going to come like in the Web3 environment, whether it's video games, AR, or VR. So yes, it's gonna be part of the omnichannel journey of a shopper, and it's gonna grow. And so for us, this is, of course, since we want to become the standard, platform for what we call the consumer experience, whether it's online, offline, or through the metaverse. It's for us a very important output of our platform and of our 3D assets. So I believe that there are steps before this mixed reality comes at play at scale, it being mass market. But I think the first steps are AR. We see an extraordinary lift in AR consumption from our customers and from our customers, the shopper. And I think that the hybrid, life of, for example, the physical store displaying, virtual experiences is, gaining traction, maybe in the big ticket to start, but it's gaining traction. And then the question becomes that when is the virtual world will gain more traction? This, I think, has still some maybe 1, 2, or 3 years to come.
Yeah, I'm this is Alex, this is why we get along so well. I'm actually seeing a very interesting resurgence almost, because everyone, right, they were rushing to, right, kind of like whether it was shareholder expectations or whatnot. And, they rushed into things, NFTs and this, that, and the other. And it wasn't necessarily, selling things in the metaverse. It wasn't necessarily right for them, but they felt that there was this yardstick they had to measure themselves against. So what I've actually seen is that since things have kind of, it's not even taking a pause, it's just a little more quiet, that a lot of really interesting work is getting done and really thinking about what it means from like a Web3 perspective. We've done a ton at Coresight of original research, actually commissioned by Shop Talk, on Web3 supply chain. And I will tell you, those are the things. I mean, Alex, you are very much a part of our thinking on this, because if you can, kind of have these kind of digital images, right, especially this like AI overlay, and you can really start to think about what that means, that you're not shipping, eventually not only kind of, samples back and forth, but what you see is what you get, right? You're not seeing a physical sample and then seeing kind of the digital equivalent. You're like, I just didn't think it was going to look at all like this. To me, you're ultimately changing. And my part of my my deep background is in supply chain. I mean, you, Alex, at Infinite, you're really changing the future supply chain in a way that we've seen very few think about it. But also, when we start to think about the impact, it's really massive.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, to your point, this is where we get along so well. And to your point, I think that there was a lot of hype in the Web3 AR metaverse thing that was interesting, but not I think that some of the things we wanted to do were too far away, forgetting the first steps that we want to do to get there. So first of all, content, then solving real pain like logistics, and then creating better experiences. So to your point, I think that after the hype, we're now working on the real things that will be transformative for the industry.
All right, so we've actually hit like on several of like the hype, right? Generative AI, we've covered. Web3, metaverse, AR, VR, covered that. All right. So last kind of hype is we talked about the digital shelf, right? And the digital shelf as it relates to retail media is just such a fascinating topic. And then going back to especially anything, I mean, we're actually now seeing it in department stores. I mean, look at Amazon. I mean, it's a game changer. And you know, Alex, how much I care about the retail market and what they can do. I mean, you're talking about, yes, of course you want to make money on the products you sell, but if you can basically monetize your IP, you can monetize your data, and more importantly, if you can monetize your digital shelf like you have your physical shelf, this is a game changer, but you need to be able, I mean, the image of it is so incredibly, and I will say there was a CPG in particular who happens to sell a lot of sweet things that I really like, that they helped me, like we went through their whole kind of like retail media right approach, and they actually said it was really interesting that the images are so much more important when you're trying to get the right, there's almost this gamification element with the consumer, and that I thought was really interesting. So talk to us about CGI, retail media, digital shelf, and how all that plays together. And is it different than what you originally expected?
Yeah, this is a great topic. So, what technology, meaning CGI and AI, so 3D based, mean when we talk about digital shelf? It's basically unlimited digital shelf. This is what the technology powers. You basically, from a static finished world of basically real estate like web experience where you have a very limited set of places that you could commercialize. You go through a world where it's basically unlimited. So for us, this is like not the end game, but one of the goal is then to so the strategy is very simple. You get retailers to shift their content strategy from creative to data driven, powered by technology, to have consistent content at scale. One. Second one is, how can you get this content to be monetized in the retail media play? Therefore, you transform what is a cost center into a profit center, which with very high profit, gross margin. And for us, this is transformative, and this is where I get very excited, because you can have that in retail media, but throughout the whole chain of the shopper journey, from advertising, on-site, remarketing, retargeting, by increasing the numbers of places where you can monetize product placement into visuals.
That to me, I will say I feel like this is like the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow that so many folks have still not necessarily thought about as it relates to their top and bottom line. And that's why I think, to me, it's like discovered, but it's undiscovered. And having conversations with, obviously there's the Amazon, Walmart, Targets. They figured it out pretty early. But now you start to think about, right, like the Macy's and the Kohl's and the grocers. I think that's a pretty, but like, to me, it's some of these really interesting, right? They are platforms. Macy's is a platform, Kohl's is a platform, and you start to think about, right. And what's interesting about a Macy's, and actually Kohl's sells a lot of kind of furniture as well, not in physical stores but only online. Even more interesting, but they are selling a lot of very large, bulky, right? As people in the right supply chain, big and bulky, right? They sell a lot of that, and when that starts to go back and forth, right? The D&D, right? The damage and destroyed is like 40%. So now Alex, if I ever look like I'm like kind of wilting or tired, right? Like, bring up this topic, because I think that there is so much that I first of all, I really want to compliment you. I think you've just done an amazing job of taking a topic that not was really quite really almost undiscovered here in the US. We had talked about kind of DPDs or digital production of basically an image that you would use for, instead of like I said, shipping samples back and forth, but it ended there, right? Like, for whatever reason, we never thought about taking that image and then using that in in e-commerce. It's just not, like, from a supply chain perspective, it's just not how our brains work, and it was just not where we lived. And this idea, right, that you're now really kind of changing the entire process. I mean, really having an impact on supply chain, on Web3 supply chain, right, in the metaverse, when it comes to generative AI, on retail media. I mean, your impact is really kind of limitless. And I don't often say that. And I mean, in some ways, right, with it's a big responsibility, because your opportunity to communicate that to individuals and have them act on it can just have such a, right, the impact is really exponential. So I just, it's a lot to have on one's shoulders. So with that, what keeps, I'm sure not much keeps you up at night, but what does, and how do you think about getting this technology and the understanding of it into the hands of more people quickly, so that we really can, I mean, we really can change a lot of things, especially around sustainability.
Well, first of all, thank you very much. I appreciate and especially coming from you, Deborah, who's such an expert in the market. As per your question, what keeps me up at night? I think that, to your point, I think that what we are discovering and enabling in terms of revolution is yeah, to your point, limitless in terms of the impact throughout the chain, to your point, from supply chain, shoppers experience, sales, retail media. There's also a massive play between how brands and suppliers interact with the retailers, with a standardized content based on 3D and CGI. And so what
Mm-hmm.
keeps me up at night is how can we, you know, make everyone understand that this is the
Yeah.
revolution and this is the future. How can we do a better job of evangelizing what seems so obvious for you, for me, but sometimes is far away from the realities of the industry. And so, long story short, it's what keeps me up at night is not to be able to move fast enough to bring the value of the revolution to the industry faster than we're doing actually.
Yeah. No, I gotta tell you, I felt the same way when we were doing this on the supply chain side. And then especially, right, as I would be sitting in sample rooms and whatnot, and you would see all this product. But it's the same, especially I'm very familiar with the return rates and the impact from a furniture perspective, which is why. And I will say one other thing, and I'm not usually, the most, I'm a tough audience, right? That whole Wall Street background. But I will say, furniture is not sexy. There is nothing sexy about it. And the fact that you started there, I also thought was really insightful, because that is where, from a return perspective, you have the biggest issues. And when something is D&D, right, you're oftentimes not able to resell it. So it is truly just landfill. So it goes back to this opportunity, but also there's the education element. So I guess with that, when you think about it, do you feel that, based on the kind of hierarchy, furniture, luxury, beauty, cosmetics, health and wellness, that in your mind you created, which I actually think is the right order, do you feel that those retailers, brands, suppliers have thought about this in that order? Or have you found, I mean, I always find that kind of footwear, apparel, accessories, they have been the ones who've been thinking about this for a really long time. And of course it will have an impact. I just think the industry is it. And of course there's footwear, apparel, accessories, and luxury. But I still think that the way that you've thought about it in that hierarchy, it's just really interesting and also really impactful. So maybe you can just help us with that, and we'll close it out.
Yeah, thank you very much. Again, I think the only way we're thinking about it is the objective is the goal is how can we bring that revolution and that impact and the benefits it brings the faster. And we found that it was easier to convince on large tickets like furniture. And once so the idea is very, not very intelligent, is that we start by, what takes the least effort to convince. We show the value and then we move to the next category and the next category. And we found that the customers we work with have accepted that hierarchy, and are now more inclined, seeing the benefits in the most obvious categories, to test it out in the less obvious categories for them, which are obvious for us. which are going down the ticket size and more to the commodity goods. So this is how we're thinking and how we're approaching the market.
So I think, Alex, we have to have you on another time because as a CEO and founder, right, you've literally looked at the market in a completely different way than anybody else ever has. And I love this idea of least resistance. So just to summarize, right, we have literally talked about it's not a new technology, but it's a new way of thinking about the application and also how we kind of have that conversation with those who could benefit from it the most. And then, this whole idea of kind of this revolution, evolution, the impact and the benefits. We've certainly touched on some of that today, right? Of course, we've done a lot of work with Infinite in terms of kind of sizing the market, looking at the impact, looking at where we are from a not only from a kind of knowledge perspective, but also from an adoption. And there's so much runway left. And so, Alex, I just want to say I'm so impressed by what you've done. You've created this community that you've built, and to see the amount of opportunity still ahead of you, it is truly inspiring. And I want to thank you for joining us today, and really congratulations on all that you've accomplished and what I know you can accomplish.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for the amazing conversation as always, and very much looking forward to the next.
Thanks.